zoom wielders if you want. And if you're serious about your beard, why not check out the Beard Hedger Pro Kit, a complete beard maintenance kit including the Beard Hedger, beard shampoo, beard conditioner, beard oil, beard balm, travel case, and as a free gift, beard accessory, beard brush, beard comb, and beard scissors.
Got enough T-minus
15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 11, 11, 11, 11, 11, 11.
mama taught me how to land on my feet. I have this way of finding trouble. It's never far. Wherever I go, take one step after another. You gotta move like a rolling stone. Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! Well, I woke up this morning with the devil knocking on my door. Well, he came without warning with the deal, you know, I just couldn't ignore. I do believe, my pretty lady, that it's time for me to move along. Take one step after another. You gotta move like a rolling stone. Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah!
I love that video. That would be Rolling Stone by the Electric Revival, and I am in the video because that was fun. Hi everybody, it's me, your old pal Big Ugly Jim, doing the thing I do every Saturday, although today is hardly a Saturday. It is in fact Sunday. And I decided that I was gonna stream today instead of yesterday because that was a thing that I did. I've been out of town at my lady friend's house doing the things that you do with your lady friend. Don't get any dirty ideas. I'm a good Christian fellow. But yeah, no, it was a good little visit, and this is like the one day that I have to do things. So I was like, I should do a stream because I didn't do a stream last week because I was at the lady friend's house, and life is life. So here we are. Hopefully everyone is well. I sure am. Can't complain at all about the world, which is sort of weird because that's most of what this channel's about. But not really. I'm not a complain about the world type guy. I'm actually more of a see the world's ails and say, hey, what can we take from this? How can we how can we maybe make the world a better place by thinking through things? So that's what hopefully we will do today. I had a gig, which was a lot of fun. A couple weeks ago, I played on a Wednesday night, Rockin' for Dollars, which is super fun. Normally they would do that at a bar here called Broken City, but this Broken City happens to be broken right now. They are doing renovations, so I did it at Inner City Brewery, which is a brewing company, and it's awesome. Hey, Maria, how you doing? I hope you're doing well, my friend. Anyways, my band Go Away Fast had a pretty fun little jam. They're 15-minute sets. And so we crammed 4 songs into 15 minutes. I played my trumpet. I would love to tell you that I played it like a champion, but in fact, I did not. But that's okay. We have another one coming up in February 1st, so that'll be fun. And Bodies of Everest, my other band, the prog metal band, is steadily approaching the point where we will be back to playing some shows. Our drummer had a torn rotator cuff and is now given the all clear to start working through it. So we've been writing, we've been recording, and we still have this dream of getting our album done. So we'll see what comes. But yeah, new material, new stage stuff, should be interesting. Anyways, that's enough about me. Go on. Let's talk about this Andrew Callaghan thing. So I'm not sure if people are familiar with Andrew Callaghan. He runs a channel called Channel 5 on the YouTubes. He also used to be the guy behind a channel called All Gas No Brakes. There was some weirdness. He ended up getting, I take it he got screwed out of it. And that is unfortunate, sort of. In retrospect, it's not so much. But it turns out that he has a bit of a reputation as what we would call a sex pest, and possibly way worse than that. And I would say probably way worse than that. What I saw from the various information that came out from people sharing the details, it did not sound like maybe this was one of those used to like his stuff. Yeah, me too. Like as a journalist, I really enjoy his stuff, but I'm not going to support him anymore because I have a funny thing about people who are sex pests and rapists. I'm kind of weird that way. But I wanted to look at his apology that he released and go through it and be like, what do we take from this? Yeah, it totally sucks. Especially like, being someone who is just, was up until recently a fan of his work and all of that. He just had a documentary come out, and I was really excited about, like, yeah, this is so cool. I'm so happy that everything's coming up roses for him. And then I find all these allegations out, and I'm like, oh, like they always say never meet your heroes. But I think what we need to do instead is start working on maybe building a society where our heroes aren't creeps. Might be a thing. That's just too common, I kind of understood it in the generation that I grew up in. Everything for, if you were a star of any description, it was all drugs and parties and everything. And, there was a cult of the bad boy, bad girl kind of vibe, and people could just be as terrible as they wanted. And we all just sort of, the culture we lived in was one that was like, oh, that's just what stars do. And, but we're not there anymore. And so people need to fucking stop. People need to, like, be respectful, even if they're rich. I know. Crazy talk. But I am a socialist. And we have utopian dreams. Unfortunately, we love the utopia. We don't love Fruitopia, because that shit's gross. But we love a good utopian fantasy where, our heroes might not be garbage and dog shit. So that's a thing. There was apparently a change to YouTube policies that says you can't swear too much in your videos or they're going to get demonetized. But worry not, because no one's monetizing me. The irony is that he spends a lot of time in the movie talking to a QAnon-type pedo hunter who was convicted for SA on a minor long ago, and he confronts him about it at the end. Yeah, like, and he's always come across on the camera as a guy who was, one of us, not necessarily like, politically and ideologically absolutely aligned with me, but he seemed like a thoughtful critic of the world and someone who, like, when they're talking about, like, hey, you're a QAnon pedo hunter, tell us all about it. Oh, aren't you also convicted of sexual? Like, that's the kind of thing that I would have expected from him. And then to find out that, he's just like finds like, I'm also a sex pest and a monster and a piece of shit. It hurts the heart. It really does. And I'm frankly, I'm tired of living in a society that somehow seems to always choose to elevate the absolute worst. So maybe we should do better. All right, let's take a look at this apology. Let me just copy this link here because I saw it earlier. And I've been through the apology, so it's not like this is going to be like a blind react, ooh, lol kind of thing. I haven't put a whole bunch of thought into what I would say about it, but we will do that. My goal is probably to, and my stuff is all weirdly shaped. Why is it weirdly shaped? Oh, because I'm on the wrong view. That would be why. Okay, there we go. I've been through it too. It's terrible. I agree, and this is the thing. I want to talk about some of what makes this a shitty apology, because there's a lot there, and I think it's worth talking about, right? So let's hit the old play button here.
All right. I never thought I'd make a video like this, but
From the start, I never thought I'd make a video like this. Well, then maybe the paired thought would have been, maybe I shouldn't be a sex pest and potentially far worse. I'm just gonna say, just for the purposes of saying it, I'm just gonna say he's a sex pest. He's a sexual assault person. He's a assaulter of the sexuals, and that's all alleged. But I'm just gonna go with it because frankly I don't give a shit. So demonetize my video. Oh no, all the money I won't get. Here we go.
I think there's an important conversation to be had, and I just want to be fully accountable, honest, and transparent.
So, great start. There's an important conversation to be had. Immediately, honestly, when I hear someone say, well, I believe there's an important conversation to be had, it instinctively sounds like someone is saying, hey, especially paired with, I never thought I'd make a video like this. This is setting the basis for, I didn't do anything wrong. You guys know. I never expected to have to make a video like this because I'm a pure soul and I'm good and I'm pure and love Jesus and, all that stuff. But there's an important conversation that we need to have. And so I am putting myself in the position of someone who did a wrong thing to have this conversation. Well, isn't that fucking, aren't you just a superhero?
All of you guys. So I'd like to start by thanking every single person who's came out in the past week to speak about different ways in which my behavior has made them feel uncomfortable or pressured.
Yeah, written by a PR team / lawyers, clearly. Absolutely. This has got someone, proofread the piss out of this for him and wrote it and all that kind of stuff. And basically just handed him and said, memorize this so your eyes aren't doing the move thing while you read. But this is what you're saying. The interesting thing that, he's, what was the exact phrasing?
Fully accountable, honest, and transparent with all of you guys. So I'd like to start by thanking every single person who's came out in the past week to speak about different ways in which my behavior has made them feel uncomfortable or pressured during a sexual situation.
Okay, so in theory, this is a great statement. Like, if the sense was that he genuinely was learning something new about himself or whatever, and he's saying thank you for the people, because I've made mistakes. We've all made mistakes in varying types, and I've been called on them. And there's been times where I've been like, oh my God, I did not even realize I was doing that. Thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. I will do better. But this is a career of this behavior, and sorry, dude, but. Again, this just reeks of public relations.
And to people who said that I've made unwanted advances and had a hard time with rejection. I'm sure this was not easy to do. It's never easy to speak out, and it was hard for me to hear as well, because to be honest with you, up until this point, I didn't even really realize that I had this pattern that had affected multiple people. I'd also like to apologize for my silence. I think that when this stuff first came out, I was in a state of denial and shock. I was, just riding the high from my movie that just came out, and then within 48 hours, I was denounced by my closest collaborators, and my name was printed in 40 different news outlets next to the words sexual misconduct, and I just kind of spiraled into a mental health crisis.
Now that I absolutely believe. The idea that he never thought it would happen to him, in terms of getting called out for it, I totally believe that. Most people who are guilty of this kind of shitty behavior really often don't see themselves as doing anything wrong. Like when you get across that line and you're like a rape, like a serial rapist type thing, like the classic image of the rapist, you're doing things that are wrong. But like sex pests and all of that, like, yeah, a lot of the times their own ego is the thing that blocks them from recognizing that they're doing anything wrong. And so I do believe that, this part is very, very genuine when he says, like, I was on a high, and all of a sudden I'm being outed as a creep and all this shit, and like, it really knocked me for a loop like that. Yeah, I absolutely believe that, because my gut feel is that he probably never expected to have any kind of ramifications from his behaviors, because it's just how boys do. Am I right, fellas? Wink, wink.
I'm okay now, but I don't really think this is about me. This is about the people that I've affected. So I just want to express my complete sympathy, respect, and support for anyone who I've done wrong by.
Isn't that great? Okay. If that was where this ended, not obviously he's missing the apology part, but I recognize that it was difficult for you, and I want to give you my complete respect and support and acknowledgement and be accountable. Like, those are all great words. Let's see if it continues.
And I really want to do better and be fully accountable for everything that I've done.
Fully accountable for everything I've done. Want to do better. Good stuff.
So that being said, I want to make a few things clear. I've always taken no for an answer.
No. Dude, if you'd always taken no for an answer, this wouldn't be a conversation you're having right now.
As far as consent, I've never overstepped that line.
No, a lot of people are saying that you overstepped that line. That's the whole thing. That's what we're doing here. And when you say, like, I know it must have been hard to come forward, and I'm sorry for the people that I made feel this way, and I want to be accountable, but I didn't do it. And I never would. Like, dude, you are failing at this. What is wrong with someone just saying, you know what? Yeah, I've got a lot of growing up to do. I grew up in a culture, and in the world that I grew up in, I maybe didn't recognize that I was being an asshole, and I get it now. I've seen these videos, and I recognize that I fucked up. No, instead it's like, I'm really sorry that you feel that way. You're wrong, and I'm perfect, but maybe try to do better.
But I think I want to have a more nuanced and important conversation about power dynamics, pressure, and coercion.
A more nuanced conversation about things that are related to the allegations that have been made about me that I obviously did not do. Obviously. This is so, like, when I saw this, that part was the part where I was like, and we're done. Like, I literally, I heard the allegations, and I was like, I have no reason to doubt these. There's too many, and there's too, it's too much to question. Then I thought, well, we'll see what comes of it. Like, this is before any of the more dark, seedy kind of allegations came out, but when it was initially just a lot of sexual pestiness, I was like, okay, well, that's not cool. But I mean, that's not like you should be punished and burn in jail or anything. That's like, you need to fucking learn how to be a human. I am Canadian. I'm sorry for all the horrible things I've done to people, and I am accountable, except for all the things they said I did, which I didn't. That stuff I don't apologize for. I recognize position of power and how things could be misconstrued by those less powerful, and I don't take advantage ever. That said, I apologize for all the horrible behavior and things, but not the things they say about me. Yeah, right? There's an interesting concept in that the lies that we tell as much about us as the truths that we tell, right? And so when we lie, we're actually presenting the person that we want to be. And I kind of believe that this is who Andrew sees himself as and wants to be, but I just don't think he's done it. He hasn't lived up to those expectations. And, so this becomes vacuous, right? Yeah. It's a real letdown, honestly.
Because, like I said, I think for a long time, I was behaving in a way that I actually thought was normal. I thought that, going home from the bar alone made you a loser. I thought that persistence was a form of flattery. And
I'm going to talk about this in a bit because, I get where he gets these ideas from. I grew up before he did, and the world that I grew up in, the media culture that I grew up in, was screamed that from the highest rooftops. That's how guys were raised to be. Yeah, it's better to say absolutely nothing than to say this. What would be better would be to be genuine and not have a PR team scrub your thing and make sure that you either be genuine and say, I didn't fucking do anything wrong and I don't know why everyone's mad at me, because then that just proves that you're a piece of shit. Or be genuine and say, I fucked up and I need help and this is the steps that I'm going to take and this is the things I'm going to do by way of apology. And I don't expect anyone to forgive me. I don't expect anyone to, stand in my corner or anything, but I got to do this for me. That would be better. But to just be well, my PR team says that I have to acknowledge without accepting. I have to be accountable without actually accounting for anything. And I need to, just share a message of hope on a much more nuanced and important conversation that I clearly am not a part of, but I'll let you in on my thoughts because it seems relevant. That is garbage.
I thought that, if at first somebody was reluctant, they're playing hard to get, just try harder. And if you think someone's feeling you, make a physical advance and see if they go with it. And I think that, especially I realized when so many young people, especially young men, rushed to defend me when this stuff first started coming out, that this type of sex pest behavior is normalized. And a lot of people think this stuff is normal when I don't think that it is.
And I do agree with that statement, right? And this is, frankly, at the risk of giving him any credit for earlier statements, it is an important conversation. It's just one that I think that he's failing at miserably. But at the end of the day, yeah, our society is very keen on the idea of, just have that little stick-to-itiveness and she'll love you no matter what. And those messages of when a girl's interested, you make your move, and your move, in a bar setting or whatever, should be pretty damn clear and just, we had a president who was grab him by the pussy, right? Or who would walk into a fucking, room full of children changing and just be cool with that. So we do, as a society, have room to improve. But the responsibility is on us to do better no matter what, to be good people no matter what. And if you live in a society where terrible things are acceptable and you do those terrible things, well, you're a terrible person. Maybe society doesn't give a shit or gives less of a shit than it should, but you still should have fucking known better, and you still should have been better because you're responsible to you.
I think that I want to be fully responsible for not having a fluid understanding of consent and what enthusiastic two-way consent looks like. That being said, a lot of the things that have been said online
Every time he says that being said, I just prepare to cringe.
about me are not true. A lot of things are missing really important contextual information that I think would change people's interpretation of a lot of these situations. But
Oh, I doubt it. I think he probably feels that way. When you talk about contextual stuff, when it comes to being a sex pest, what you're really saying is, yeah, I pestered her, but, she wanted it, obviously. Look at me. I'm Andrew fucking Callaghan, bitch. And like, this is the stuff. Like, when you're gonna do an apology, don't throw in things to justify what you did that was wrong, that you're supposedly being accountable for, and just be like, well, you know, if you knew the whole story, you'd be like, nah, man, it's cool. Sex passed away, brother. No.
I'm not here to invalidate anybody's lived experience.
I'm not here to invalidate anybody's lived experience. So when we talk about lived experience, I hate that term because it's kind of a blanket way of saying, you know, this is what you experience. It's gaslighting, in my opinion, right? You know, and it kind of goes both ways. Like when, for example, someone who is a visible minority says, like, my lived experience is that there is racism in this town, for example. And I go, well, you know, I appreciate your lived experience, but what it's saying is, you know, fuck what you've experienced. It doesn't matter. And likewise, he's saying, like, you know, I've heard these things that were said about me, and I don't want to invalidate anyone's lived experience. It's just that they're wrong. That's invalidating their lived experience, you fucking schmuck.
If you feel pressured, you know, that's just what it is. I hope that young people and young men in particular can use my mistakes to learn and move through life with a better understanding of consent.
I wish that were true, Andrew. But here's the thing. When you do an apology like this, what you're doing is you're saying, don't learn from my mistakes. I didn't make any. You know, there's some royal we out there that, you know, can learn from my brilliance on the subject, my diction as it comes to the topic at hand or whatever. Yeah, you can do that. But what you're doing by doing exactly this is you're saying, don't learn from my experiences because I'm not planning to. I want to be accountable, but I did nothing. I want to be responsible for the nothing that I did. Well, sorry, dude, but, you know, you can fucking stop that shit right now.
As far as what I have planned, I'm not really sure what comes next. I mean, obviously, you know, reporting is my one true love, and I'm 25 years old, and I have my whole life ahead of me. But I really think that I need to do some serious work on myself and figure myself out. So I'm going to start therapy sessions pretty much immediately.
And I hope this is true. I don't count on it being true. I don't in any way have any reason to believe it's true. And I don't believe for a minute that this isn't the get out of jail free card. So there's two sides to therapy, right? You can go to therapy with a open mind and a desire for self-improvement, and you can do great things for yourself to recognize your problems and the things you need to fix and to learn how to fix them. I've been through therapy many times. I've also been in therapy where I was not in that headspace and where I was simply going to present the facts in a way that discounts the need for therapy. And I have a strong suspicion that that's where we are, Andrew, is we're going to go to therapy because it looks good from a resume perspective when you encounter this kind of thing. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am.
Also, not to blame alcohol, but I truly believe that alcohol was a contributing factor to my poor decision making. And I think that alcohol in general has had a devastating impact on my life.
I can't speak for all people that drink, but I can speak for myself. I can say I've done some shit when I was drinking that I probably shouldn't have done, but I never did shit when I was drinking that I probably shouldn't have done that I didn't want to do, right? Alcohol depresses your inhibitions and maybe makes you open to doing things that you normally wouldn't do, and normally there's that little voice in your head going, dude, what do you fucking stop. But this again comes across like, you know, the devil alcohol done made me do all the bad things they're saying I did. It wasn't me, it was alcohol. How can I be held accountable for alcohol? It's Jack Daniels you should be talking to, and Jim Beam. Those people, they're fucking terrible. This is another attempt at a get out of jail free card, right? Sorry, dude, you fucked up. You fucked up repeatedly and with a very common vibe about your fuckery, and now you're being called out on it. And the best thing you can do is accept it, take ownership of it, and fix your problems. Whether that means, you have a career or not is sort of immaterial at this point. This is about you and about your life going forward. And to just be like, yeah, alcohol, fuck off.
So I think I'm going to make the decision to join the 12-step program for Alcoholics Anonymous. And during this journey into sobriety, I want to take a serious step back from public life. And like I said, figure myself out. And I hope that this reaches the ears of anyone who's felt affected by me. I'd love to reach out to you, or you can reach out to me, even just for me to say, I'm sorry. And I really apologize, and I appreciate you all. I also want to apologize to my closest collaborators, my friends, my family, and people who will have to wear this stain on their career forever.
This is empty. I'm so sorry to the people that I hurt. And, feel free to reach out to me, the guy who put you in this position, so I can go, maybe I'm sorry. I don't know. I didn't do anything. And also I want to apologize to the people who, work with me and in some cases probably knew very fucking well that I was this way. And, I'm sorry that this is going to blow back on you. Just empty.
You guys don't deserve this, and I love you guys. That being said, if you never want to watch Channel 5 again, I understand. I hope you remember the missions of radical empathy and media literacy that we have tried to put into the world through our coverage.
And honestly, I have trouble believing. I've seen a lot of Channel 5 content. I've heard him talk about this radical empathy thing before, and I don't really see it. I see a lot of allowing people to talk and allowing people to talk past the point where they are comfortable talking, and they just keep talking and they accidentally reveal some stuff. That happens all the time with Channel 5, and I think that's fun and cool and awesome. But radical empathy, maybe I don't understand what he means by that, but what I will take from Andrew Callaghan and from Channel 5 is basically this. I enjoyed some content that was fun and different, and content that was sort of gave a platform to people whose ideas and opinions I don't share, and allowed them more often than not to themselves show why that platform was not warranted and why their opinions were trash. I did not empathize with them. I did not sympathize with them. Andrew had a particular talent at sticking a microphone in someone's face and having them speak and leaving that microphone just a little bit too long. And then people go, they feel like, oh, you're waiting for me to say more. I had better say more. And then they say things that they probably should not have because they're prepared for that first part, but they're not prepared for that second part. And that's where the empathy may, very well go and die, because I can be empathic and empathetic to that initial statement, the person who's thought about, if he asks me about this, I'm going to say this, and put the thought in. But once they get past that, that's where the truth comes. And honestly, it's fucking mind-blowing to see this video from him, this apology that fits that same vibe so well, and makes me go, I wish someone had kept the camera on him just a little bit longer, and he had lapsed away from what the PR people had written, and he actually spoke his mind. Because I have no idea what he thinks and how he actually feels about what he's done. I don't get the impression like he actually gives a shit, except for the fact that he got in trouble and he wants to, evade the consequences of that. So I think the whole apology is a nothing. It's a big zero. I get why he felt he had to do it. I get why his PR team felt he had to do it, why they felt they had to control the narrative and all of the things that PR teams do. But at the end of the day, the only right answer for a valid apology is to be honest and sincere. accept the things that you did. I've been guilty of plenty of things in my life, and there have been times when I've been guilty of things that I did not realize I was doing. There are times when my actions have hurt people in ways I wasn't prepared for or expecting, and when I get called on them, as happens, at least in modern history, I have taken the approach of listening and saying, "Oh shit, is this really what I did? How do I feel about that? And do I need to, like, if I don't need to apologize, I fucking won't, right? If I feel like, if someone comes up and says, you know, Big Ugly Jim shot my dog, I'm like, I didn't fucking kill you. I didn't shoot your dog. What are you talking about? I did not do that. I'm not going to apologize for it, no matter what PR says to me, right? I'm not going to do that. But if it's a thing that I did, then I have to figure out how the apology should go. There's nothing wrong with saying, like, I'm sorry you felt that way. I would like to present my side of things and show you why I disagree with how you framed it. However, I totally understand that, you know, the way you have interpreted this is valid and sincere, and I own that, and I'm sorry that my actions, which were perhaps well-intentioned or whatever, did not come out that way, right? I'm saying that kind of poorly, but what it boils down to is, like, there's a way to say that, and it's not like, I'm sorry you chose to take offense, or I'm sorry you chose to look at things that way. It's like, I'm sorry that the things I did were, you know, my intention was different than how you've interpreted it, but how you've interpreted it is valid. And so I have to own that too. I have to fix these things because that was never my intention, and I fucked up by not nailing that, right? It always comes down to owning it. And if you can't do that, then you should not make an apology. You know, that BP oil commercial, you know, hey, we're really sorry about all that oil we spilled. We're really sorry. Fucking sorry. Great. That doesn't help anything. Sorry is an important sentiment if it's meant, but it's also just the beginning of fixing things. And if you can't do better than just saying, oops-a-doodle, I sure am sorry that I did all the things, then you should just shut your fucking hole. Period. But I do find that, you know, there's things that Andrew said that I do agree with, as I mentioned during the thing. You know, I being my age, and of course I am old AF, I am regularly confronted with things that I was like, oh wow, I really liked that when I was a kid, and here we are now. The best and most fresh example in my mind, last night in a hotel room, I watched Revenge of the Nerds, the original Revenge of the Nerds. At the time, I loved the movie. It was so much fun. The nerds were, you know, adorably nerdy, and the jocks were all like either super pretty or like ogre-like, literally ogre, the jock. And it was very relatable for me as a kid. And the nerd wins, you know, Louis Skolnick gets the girl, and it's like, oh, isn't that beautiful? And I rewatched it a long time ago and was like, oh my fucking God. And it was on last night, and I kind of wanted to relive that moment of oh my fucking God, and how this very successful, very popular film at the time presented humans, and particularly presented. There's one scene that is, I think, super important in there. So to set the scene, there is the beautiful girl who is the girlfriend of the quarterback, who is the bully, who makes the nerds all feel sadly sad about themselves. And it turns out that there's like a costume thing that they're doing. It's a charity fundraiser, and the super jock has a mask and a hat that obscures his face, and a black outfit. And Lewis, the head nerd, is wearing a black outfit, and he realizes he can steal that mask and get with the girl. So they go into this like moon room, and she thinks that this is her boyfriend. they have the sex, and she's like, he reveals himself, and she's like, oh my God, I love a nerd. And I'm like, holy fucking, he raped her. That was rape. She thought she was having sex with a whole nother person. That's not okay. Turns out bad. And that concept, that like, you know, isn't that a great little piece of film to explain why the girl falls for the guy? What the fuck? And what does it say about her that, you know, she finally has this beautiful sexual encounter, and it's with someone who she didn't even realize it was, who she doesn't know his name at that point, and she immediately falls in love because obviously, you know, women's be like. All they need is a good LD and they'll wind up in love. Like, what the fuck is the message of this movie? And that wasn't like the half of it. And it's interesting how often the things that were culturally like the surrounding noise in my childhood really had grotesque vibes associated with them, right? Vibes of like consent isn't that important if you just, you know, sex pest away. Vibes of really stalkery behavior. You know, you can always win the girl back. You can always win her over. And if you wait long enough, she'll realize that you're the guy. And this shit affected me when I was a kid, right? I thought that this was the world. Andrew was around 20 when hashtag Me Too started, so he should have known better. Oh, I 100% agree. I 100% agree. And I'm not in any way, I'm talking about my life now and not Andrew's. Andrew's, if I was to extrapolate, I'd say that Andrew, you know, has grown up from what I understand with hip hop and a lot of other stuff. And those are spheres where I don't think consent is particularly well driven. And the sort of club kid party culture thing, I think, similarly has those kinds of issues. That said, like, okay, dude, you also grew up now, right? He's, as you say, he was around 20 when Me Too started, so he's not that terribly much older than 20. Like, I would guess he's under 30. And that means that he grew up in a world where even before Me Too, we were having these conversations. We were talking about consent. We were talking about toxic masculinity. You know, these are not new, the last few years' revelations. And so he should have been having these conversations and at least hearing them and understanding them and having an opinion on them. And it sounds to me like he did, but just didn't apply to himself, which I think is super common. Like I said earlier, you know, you can live in a society that permits the worst of things. And then if you do those things, you're still bad. Just because society says, no, it's cool. Don't worry about it. You know, people who, in the time of slavery in the U.S., for example, people who owned slaves, I don't care that it was the thing to do at the time. I don't care that it was a, you know, quote unquote necessary economic position to take in order to achieve any kind of wealth. I don't give a shit. You knew that owning people was bad. And if you didn't, what the fuck was wrong with you? I don't care how you've maybe not understood the lesson of all of history and the fact that you don't want to be owned by people. Like, does not matter. If your society permits evil and you do evil, you did evil. It does not matter to me. And, you know, again, I have done my share of stupid shit, my share of shady shit. I am not pretending to be like, you know, Mary fucking Magdalene here. Wait, maybe I am Mary Magdalene. She was the prostitute, right? Yeah, not Mary Mama, right? I'm no Puritan, and I've made my mistakes and I've learned from them, and you know, hopefully done the things that I needed to do in order to ensure that A, I grew, and B, I made some kind of restitution to the people who were harmed by those things. I can't think of ever having been, I just plug in my computer in, I can't think of being a sex pest or you know, what have you, but you know, I know along the way I've made some choices that were shady, and I've had to, you know, learn from those, adapt from those, and do better. But all of this got me thinking about, like, you know, that topic of why is it that we can look back at media and be like, ooh, that did not age well. And actually, there's a very simple answer. It's because we are a progressive society. You know, we may have regressive elements, absolutely, but by and large, we move forward. So, you know, when my eldest child, or not eldest son, not eldest child, when my eldest son moved in with me, he was interested in stand-up comedy, and we were watching some stand-up comedy, and I was like, you're gonna love Bill Hicks. I love this guy. And the truth is, I hadn't listened to Bill Hicks in a long time, but Bill Hicks was huge, right? You know, he's all over. Is it Enema by Tool? His voice is throughout that, and you know, like, he was the George Carlin of the next generation, and he was like a very important thinker. You know, I would put him in the same, like, George Carlin, him, and Lenny Bruce, like, all very, very progressive voices in the context of the society they lived in. And I was like, oh, this is going to be so awesome. And we put it on, and I was like, we can stop this. This is not how I remember it. It's the same with, like, Eddie Murphy or any of these things. Like, society at the time was like, yeah, it's cool to make fun of gay people. Let's just do that. Or you know, men who dress in women's clothing, the preverts, and all that kind of stuff. And as a kid, because of the world I grew up in, I didn't pick up on any of this as being like, well, that's shitty, just because that was the message all around me. And that's not something I'm pleased about. That's something that, you know, unfortunately I had to learn. And, you know, as an example of how I wouldn't let myself off the hook, if I did things at those times, let's say I was a stand-up comedian. I have done stand-up comedy before, but I never did a set around, aren't the gay people weird? But if I had, you know, okay, that's a fuck up. My responsibility would be to, like, you know what, I'm sorry. Whatever I want to do to justify doesn't matter. I said and did things that hurt people, and I didn't even think that I was doing it because of you know, the way that I was perceiving things, but I was wrong. I did hurt people, and I am sorry, and I'm going to do better, and here's how I'm going to do better, right? That's how you do an apology, as long, again, as it's heartfelt and sincere. So yeah, at the end of the day, I feel like Andrew Callaghan, like, I'm not going to tell anyone else how to react to him. I would say that apology was terrible. I would say that 2 years or 5 years ago, whatever that magic number is, if I'd seen that apology, I'd have been like, what a brave and heroic person. But we've been through Me Too. We've been through so much since then. And we have had to learn what makes a good apology versus what makes a good PR statement. And they are not the same. And I feel like what we got there was nothing more than a PR statement. And that just, like, sorry, dude, you failed. So I personally will not be watching any Channel 5 content or anything else that he does. You know, time will tell when all is said and done, when you know, all the facts are in, we can decide what this all means. But for the time being, what I see is plenty of reasonably valid sounding evidence that says that he was a kind of shitty person. Plenty of denial and obfuscation from him, and turning it into I don't want to take accountability, but I do want to have the larger conversation about this nuanced topic of sexual power, which, for the record, he didn't ever talk about in that. You know, that's something that I found interesting, is that he talks about how he wants to talk about the dynamics of power and sexuality, and then does not speak about it, aside from saying, you know, women, right? So let's take a second and talk about that, because these incidents happened long before he would have been considered a person of any power. I would say that is only a fairly recent phenomena for him. Even when he was doing All Gas No Brakes, or the start of Channel 5, he was just a guy in an RV. It's not exactly a position of power. And you could argue the presence of a camera or whatever, or a crew, whatever, but at the end of the day, I don't feel like that's a power position, and I feel like these allegations go far enough back that even what little power you can apply to that isn't there. This was just a dude who would go out with his buddies with the intent of getting laid, find that person that he wanted to get laid with, and then do everything in his power to do that. And I've heard a story that sounded reasonably credible, although again, I don't pretend to know what actually happened. But I heard a story where he was with a woman who he had been with on several occasions, and I don't remember what the kids are calling it these days, but the whole, oh yes, of course I'm wearing a condom, and then didn't. That's not cool. I don't care, period. That is right there. That is sexual assault, because you are invalidating any consent you've received, because the consent you've received was for something completely different. Stealthing. Yes, that's the word for it. Stealthing. This is the same to me as Louis Skolnick pulling off the mask and being like, haha, lol, surprise. It was me having this sex with you all along and not your boyfriend. That consent was not given. They gave consent to have sex with their boyfriend. They gave consent to have sex with a condom. You can't just blur that line. And frankly, I don't give a fuck, number one, if people have a hard time with that. Like if the Andrew Callaghan's of the world are like, well, but I got consent for part of it. First and foremost, consent can always be revoked. Second, if you're not clear about what the person is consenting to, they can't consent, right? It kind of falls in the same regard as, like, if I hand you a thing that says, like, it's a consent form and there's a waiver for, anything that I do that might cause you personal injury as a result of this, accidental whatever, blah, blah, blah. You sign the thing, I pull it again and shoot you. Well, you didn't consent to that. You consented to potentially being at some level of risk, probably under the suspicion that it wasn't a bunch of risk, and then I shot you. These are different things. Sorry, but the piece of paper is not going to stand up. And I don't understand why that's difficult for people. I don't understand, like, consent is actually a very simple concept. And I have had, in my life, I have had partners who did not respond well when I sought consent. I had a girlfriend once that I was, not girlfriend, but a woman that I was having the sex with. And I was like, may I do X? Because it was it was like, hey, can I go down on you? We were in the middle of doing all the fun playing around stuff. And I know that for some people, that's like a thing that is not for everyone, and whatever. And so I asked, and she said no, which is perfectly fine. But the way she said no, and later she explained that I shouldn't have asked, I should have just done it. And as soon as I asked her, she was like, well, you don't obviously want to, or whatever. And I was like, well, that's weird of you to have had that conversation in your head, because fine, like, weird. Consent is actually pretty fucking basic, and enthusiastic consent is pretty fucking awesome. And I have no idea why anyone would want to, not just from the running the risk perspective, but if I'm doing things with a person and they're not like 100%, oh fuck yeah, on board, let's go team whatever, I don't want to do that. I want both people to be like, hell yeah, this is awesome. And if only one of them is doing that and the other one's like, we could stop anytime, like if you're getting tired, like, that's not fun. That's not good. That's not buds. So you don't do that. At that point, you just be like, you know what? You're right. Maybe we should stop. All right. Now, to make sure it's clear, when the person said no, I simply didn't do the thing, asked for consent for the next thing, and they were like, yes. And that was like, I was like, hey, no, you don't seem to be into this. And then they explained to me that I was just, a worthless cuck for asking for consent. And I was like, well, either you do or you don't. And if you don't consent, I'm not moving forward. And that's the end of this conversation. And so they consented, and we had a conversation, and we finished and had a little bit of fun. And I'm fairly certain that was the last time I was with that person. In fact, it was. I know it was. But it was just like, it was really fucking weird to me. Because, like, people should feel respected when you ask. And it wasn't like I was like, excuse me, mother, may I please take this little finger and touch your bazoom with it. It was nothing like that, right? Because you can have a very, like, sexy, powerful, like, this is what I would like to do to you, or this is what I want done to me, or whatever. You can have those conversations and have them be not some simpering, like, pardon me, milady, might I put my lips upon yours? That's not how it has to do. And that is not how I would have done. So, yeah, it was weird. It was weird as shit. Like, I grew up in a time where consent was not the conversation. And this is a newer thing. When the conversation began, I was like, well, yeah, because I'd already kind of figured out myself that, from my own experiences, that I wanted people to be enthusiastically down with whatever we were doing, and that, but I grew up in the time of like, oh, just fake your orgasm. Ha ha ha, that'll get it done. And that's gross. That's fucking disgusting. And that was never how I wanted my universe to go. So I just made sure as a long before the conversation was a thing, I made sure that I understood what consent meant as best as I could. And absolutely, when that conversation began, I learned a lot about consent because I was exposed to different perspectives about it. And I recognized that, I can do better. There are things that I can learn from all of this and be a better version of me. That's cool. That's important. Like, I know one of my first, and it wasn't a sexual experience, but it was sort of, well, I guess it was, but it wasn't like sex. But when I was like, I think 16 or 17, there was a girl and there was a circumstance. And I remember being like, would you like to? And she was like, no. And I was like, I get that. And she's like, I feel better if tomorrow we had this conversation, because tonight I'm a little bit wrapped up in feelings, and tomorrow might be a better day. And I was like, but what if you don't like me tomorrow? And I meant it as a joke, but that is sex pest stuff. And I dropped it then. As soon as it was out of my mouth, I was like, that was a weird thing to say. And I dropped it, and I was like, yeah, we're done. We're cool. And that was the end of that. But long before I had the terminology for it, I was like, well, that was weird and kind of pathetic of me, and I'm not cool with that. And it, years later, I would recognize that, when we talk about when consent became the conversation, I was like, whether I meant it as a joke or otherwise, that was a thing where I was trying to sort of present an argument that might justify, not, or pushing through that consent. And I was like, yeah, I'm glad that didn't happen. I'm glad that I dropped it and did not dig deeper and push, because that's fucking gross. And there's no excuse for that. So I'm glad that I learned a lesson. And I'm kind of proud of the fact that I learned it, on my own, just based on like, well, that wasn't good behavior that I can see, so I should stop doing that. And I did. This is what I'm getting at, is like, when I was at that age, I would have been like, let's just say it had gone further and I had been able to, pester them to the point where we ended up having sex. No one would have been there to say like, you kind of crossed the line there. Everyone would have been like, high fives, yay. And that's gross. That's just fucking gross. And I'm glad I learned the lesson I did. And I'm glad that I didn't push the issue. Because in all truth, I was legitimately trying to be funny about it. But immediately knew, like, okay, that feels like I'm whining. because, you know, I say funny things all the time. And sometimes, as soon as they're out in the air, I'm like, ooh, bad look. Bad look indeed. Anyways, Andrew, sorry, not going to watch your content. And I hope that whatever happens, I hope that he does take an honest look and he does do an honest introspective evaluation of his behavior. And I hope he does come back with, oops, I fucked up. I fucked up hard. I hurt people like in tangible, real, ugly ways. And I need to fix this in some way. I need to find a way to do better for me and to try and make up for the mistakes of my past. The answer is not getting your PR team to write you a little get out of jail free card. You know, dear society, please forgive Andrew his lapse in judgment as he was having a hard day. Signed, Andrew's mom. Like, sorry, dude. Ain't happening. All right. Well, it's time for me to take a little pausey break. That kind of, I think I kind of summed up both of the things that I had planned on talking about. So I'm going to leave it to you guys what we do when I come back from break. If you have things you'd like me to talk about, by all means, please let me know. Throw it in the old chateau area. We can go straight to the karaoke, although it feels like a short stream then, because that would be weird. Or I can try and see what comes to me. But if there's I'd rather have conversations with you guys. You guys are interesting. So let me know if there's things that you want to talk about, and I'll lend my thoughts. But I will be back in a couple of minutes. I should put on some of my delightful music, which is not queued up, because why would I be prepared? Let's do the old awkward... Oh, you know, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play the incredibly uncomfortable song that I wrote that is the drums in 11/8, the guitar in 5/8, and the bass in 4/8. There's no reason to put you through that. I will play faster kitty fuck, and that'll work. I shall return shortly. Wrong mic, I unmuted. Ha ha lol. Alright, I have returned. May election, vote the motherfuckers out. Well, I could not agree with you more. So yes, there is an election this coming May that will be in the province of Alberta, where I live, although my traffic doesn't come from there because Surfshark. And no, they're not sponsoring this. I'm not cool enough like that. But May. It feels very far away, and I feel like it is far too early. I've heard a lot of people who are like, yep, the Conservatives are out. I don't feel it's quite so simple just yet. So yeah, let's talk about that. We currently have a government that is made up of the United Conservative Party, or UCP, which is led by, what's her name? Danielle Smith. I always want to say Danielle Steele, but Danielle Steele, very different person. Danielle Smith is awful. Someone who I cringed deeply when Danielle Smith even announced that they were going to run for the leadership of the PC party, or the UCP party. But I knew that it was going to be a win. That's why I cringed. Danielle Smith is one who loves to lean into the far right. The QAnons and all of that shit. Right down to taking those concepts of sovereign citizenship and turning those into a provincial bill that she wants to pass. This, in my opinion, is one of the most ridiculous and dangerous pieces of legislation that we've had in a very long time. I'm going to see Alberta Sovereignty Act. Is the text of the act... So the official name is the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act. Does it have the actual text? Let's find out. And if it does... Oh, it does? Oh, no, it doesn't. Am I... Okay. Bill 1... November 29th, first reading is passed, and there is a transcript. Is that going to do it for us? Oh, that's like the full, like, the Sergeant at Arms talking and stuff. We'll see if there's something a little more clear than that. Close that, and Bill 1. What is A1? Is that an amendment that they've already put in? Yeah, December 7th, 2022. Sorry, I will make this will be clear in a second. Yes, we have the bill and we have an amendment. So let's not do too terribly much, but I want to get the gist of what this is. Can I shrink this a little bit so that the... Apparently not. Apparently I have to have a gigantic navigation bar because it's PDFs and that's the world we live in. Okay, well, we're going to go to the browser and we're going to review. So this is the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act. Bill 1. Does this actually have text? Whereas Albertans possess a unique culture and shared identity within Canada. This is like directly cribbed from the whole concept of Quebec separation. Quebec's big thing has always been, as French Canada, they have a unique culture, they have a unique history, and a shared identity. And so Alberta is just like, we do too. We like, oil, and we don't like the coloreds. Whereas it is the role of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta and the Government of Alberta to preserve and promote this unique culture and shared identity. Whereas the Constitution Act 1867, the Constitution Act 1930, and the Constitution Act 1982 are foundational documents that establish the rights and freedoms of Albertans and the relationship between the provincial and federal orders of government, including the division of legislative powers between them. Whereas the province of Alberta is granted rights and powers under the Constitution Act, blah, 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 blah. and is not subordinate to the government of Canada, which is not true. Whereas actions taken by the Parliament of Canada and the Government of Canada have infringed on these sovereign provincial rights and powers with increasing frequency and have unfairly prejudiced Albertans. This is not true. I think that she's referring to Coots and the fact that the RCMP were sent in to deal with a blockade that was impairing travel across the border, particularly for goods and services, as a protest of COVID restrictions. But there's other things like the fact that the right feel very maligned that we can make all this oil revenue and then have to sharesies some of it. And there's a million other things. Albertans, honestly, the unique culture of Alberta is to whine about the fact that we're somehow different special snowflakes. We complain about the fact that our voice is rarely heard in government. And that is true. And it's true because we have a much smaller population than Eastern Canada, and have always had a much smaller population than Eastern Canada. And so Eastern Canada has more representation because they have a higher population. Weird, I know. Whereas actions taken by the Parliament of Canada and the Government of Canada have infringed on the rights and freedoms of Albertans enshrined in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in an unjustified and unconstitutional manner. Pretty sure here she's referring to the COVID restrictions, which did not particularly infringe on many people. I personally, I don't like the idea that vaccines were mandated for anyone, but at the same time, there's a necessity in a pandemic to react to the situation and c'est la vie. But, you know, Ontario would have a lot more right to be saying, hey, we had actions by the government infringing on the rights and freedoms of Albertans, when referring to, like, the way that the federales dealt with the convoy folks. Though I would entirely disagree with that sentiment, but it would certainly be a lot more of a valid statement than what we've experienced here. Whereas the people of Alberta expect the Parliament of Canada and the Government of Canada to respect the Constitution Act as the governing documents of the relationship between Canada and Alberta, and to abide by the division of powers and other provisions set out in these documents. Whereas the people of Alberta expect the Parliament of Canada and the Government of Canada to respect the rights and freedoms of Albertans enshrined in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and whereas it is necessary and appropriate for the Legislative Assembly of Alberta to set out measures that the Lieutenant Governor in Council should consider taking in respect of actions of the Parliament of Canada and the Government of Canada that are unconstitutional or harmful to Albertans, and for members of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta to have a free vote on such measures according to their individual judgment. Therefore, His Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta, enacts as follows. Probably a good thing that the first thing that appears is a definition of Aboriginal peoples of Canada, referring to the Indian, the Inuit, and the Métis people of Canada within the meaning of Section 35 of the Constitution Act. But we'll get past, this is just the definitions and things. Nothing in this act is to be construed as authorizing any order that would be contrary to the Constitution of Canada, authorizing any directive to a person other than a provincial entity that would compel the person to act contrary to or otherwise in violation of any federal law, or abrogating or derogating from any existing Aboriginal and treaty rights of the Aboriginal peoples of Canada that are recognized and affirmed by Section 35 of the Constitution Act 1982. Now, I don't know what all is, from a treaty perspective, is recognized. This sounds like what they're saying is that we would not have the ability to supersede the Constitution, nor would we have the ability to supersede the rights and freedoms assigned to Canadian citizens as the Albertans, and we would not have the right to change any existing agreements between Canada and Aboriginal groups. So, interesting. But I do not trust. If, on a motion of member of Executive Council, the Legislative Assembly approves a resolution that states the resolution is made in accordance with this Act, states that the opinion of the Legislative Assembly, a federal initiative, is unconstitutional on the basis that it intrudes into an area of provincial legislative jurisdiction, violates the rights and freedoms of more or one or more Albertans under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, or causes or is anticipated to cause harm to Albertans, sets out the nature of the harm. If the resolution states that in the opinion of the blah blah blah, the Lieutenant Governor and Council may take the actions described in Section 4. So this is the powers they want to give. If the Legislative Assembly approves a resolution described in Section 3, the Lieutenant Governor and Council, to the extent that it is necessary or advisable in order to carry out a measure that is identified in the resolution, may by order. This is such like, I know it's legal, but like, it's terribly written. Period. If the Lieutenant Governor in Council is satisfied that doing so is in the public interest, direct a minister responsible for the enactment as designated under the section of blah, 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 suspend or modify the application or operation of all or part of an enactment subject to the terms and conditions of the Lieutenant Governor, specify or set out provisions that apply in addition to or instead of any provision of an enactment, subject to the approval of the Lieutenant Governor in Council. I'm still struggling to understand what the fucking point is, right? What this reads like so far is essentially, one big document that screams states' rights, which is what they're going for, in my opinion. The same conversation as the Americans have all the time about states' rights and how it is the responsibility of the state to make certain decisions, and the Constitution defines this. That is true. There is, in the Constitution and in several Canadian important documents, there is federal statutes that apply to all provinces, and then the provinces can interpret. A good example of that is the Health Act, that enshrines access to abortions in the as a right to Canadian women, and then it is up to the provinces to implement that, however they see fit, in such a fashion that does not violate that initial statement of you have the right to have an abortion under the Canada Health Act. And the way that they deal with that from a states' rights perspective is they limit access, all of the things, they allow protests within uncomfortable distance of places where abortions are performed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what are the actions that we're upset about? Well, honestly, the only thing that immediately comes to mind is the COVID response. So what was the COVID response? Well, from a federal level, the COVID response was, we should probably get some vaccines. There was no federal mandate for COVID. There was federal mandates around crossing the border into the United States and international travel, which is exactly the jurisdiction of the federal government. We would not, as Albertans, have the right to say we're going to just open our borders wide and allow anyone to stream through from the U.S. border or the, I guess our border to the north is the territories, so we wouldn't have that. But you know what I mean? Like, we wouldn't have the ability to just change immigration law that is federally appointed. Similarly, the borders are going to be a federal issue because they represent the federal interest. So it doesn't make sense that we would have access to decide whether or not things are going to happen at the border. And again, I just want to point out that the rule that was put through was you can't cross the border without a vaccine. And proof of, basically, like, if you're dripping COVID snot and your snot says COVID, in a bright green lettering, they're probably going to say you should maybe go home and have a nap before you come across. But that wasn't, and contrary to what the Freedom Convoy will tell you, that wasn't in any way going to lose jobs for people. We have a huge trucking industry, and the truckers had the option to not be vaccinated and go all the way across the country. It's the minute that you cross the border that you run into issues, or cross the border into Canada. Now, our rules were around crossing the border into Canada, and America had rules about crossing the border into the United States, and they were basically the fucking same. So, like, you can get pissed off and be like, well, it's not fair the Canadian government doesn't, let people cross that border. But the U.S. government was doing the same thing for reasons of this is a bad thing for, international spread. Now, I personally think the timing was stupid. I personally think that it was kind of unnecessary action that led to a lot of problematic bullshit. But what is the point of this legislation? So that we can say no. So that we can go, well, we feel this is a constitutionally invalid thing and that you're infringing on the rights. Acoustic DR, thank you for the follow. Welcome. Hi, I want to offer a promotion of your channel. Oh, well, no. Pardon me. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to let that one go. But I'm not here for you to hype your stuff and offer promotion on my channel. So that'll be that. If it continues, I'll block you. If you want to just come hang out, you're more than welcome. But this feels like there was a immediate follow in a paragraph of text. It sounds to me like you're either a bot or you've got macros or whatever, and you're not interested in what I'm saying. You're just here to hype yourself. So if that's the case, eat a dick. What is the point of all of this? So to me, this feels like a very empty gesture wherein we will spend a large amount of money debating and determining what exactly we will pass in this Sovereignty Act. And then we will enact it as soon as we possibly can to argue about the government doing bad thing. And then that will go to a legal Supreme Court type of a conversation, and it will be laughed out of court. Because the government federally has powers. And they're important. I guess the other thing that they keep hammering on about, which is also bullshit, is the government taking our guns. Or coming for your guns, which is, I know, not the first time you've ever heard this particular refrain. But it is a regular conversation that takes place and is also fucking stupid. The legislation that was put forward by the Liberal Party, I'm going to switch so we're not looking at this view for right now because it's my face you're here to see. The legislation that was put forward by the federal government around firearms a while back, I wasn't terribly fond of some of the aspects of it. I always feel like they make a mistake when they try to identify, these weapons are going to be banned, because there will always be reasonable scenarios, especially with a rural population. Pardon me, I'm hiccuping. Especially with a rural population for people having guns. I am not an anti-gun person. I'm not a pro-gun person. I like guns, and I think they're kind of funzo, but I don't own them because I have teenagers, and that would be probably not good, in my opinion. People can argue this and fine. Yes, I'm the one time I had this conversation with, I was on a debate, and Critically Thinking Veteran, or CTV, was like, well, it sounds like you're just a bad parent. I was like, fine. Okay, then I'll be a bad parent and just not put myself in a position where I run the risk of my kids having their hands on guns. I'll just be that bad dad. Cool. But one of the laws that came in was that you cannot transfer ownership of a handgun. So if I own a handgun, first off, there's no more handgun sales in Canada. Or I think it's no more handguns. I'm not 100% sure. And you can't transfer ownership, so I can't give somebody my handgun. I can't blah, 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 blah. This is the thing that I was like, is that really helping anything? I don't feel like it is. I could go either way on it, and I'm not going to get all bunged up one way or the other. It seems like ineffective legislation, which is exactly what I would expect from my leaders. But at the end of the day, like, okay, I don't really care. No one is coming for anyone's guns here. That has always been something that just doesn't work. Alberta has, or Canada has a lot of people who are, rural life folks, and who use guns for hunting and who use guns for protecting their cattle, and they use guns for any number of things that are legal, and also use guns for sport, hunting, and things like that. And you can easily sit in, like I live in Calgary, right? It's a big shiny city. And I can easily sit in Calgary and go, what is the point of an AR-15? Why? But there are people who own them who can give me an answer to that. I don't necessarily agree with the answer, but it's kind of a moot point to, okay, fine, we'll take your AR-15, but you can have an M16, or we'll take your M16, but you can have a whatever, right? At the end of the day, people are going to have guns, and the thing that we need to be doing is changing our cultural expectation around using guns in a argumentative, solution-based kind of model, right? So if you have a problem, maybe our society could lean less on guns and more on punching people in the nose. That'd be cool. God, I sound like Gavin McInnes for a second. No, I did not. But you know what I mean? Like, there's no one coming for your guns. And the conservatives here in Alberta love waving that flag because a lot of Alberta is made up of farms and, rural environments where people are guns are just a part of their lives. And when you wave that flag, they also tend to vote in blocks and tend to vote in conservative blocks. So people get behind that. All of this Sovereignty Act shit it's empty. I don't see anything about it that actually has any merit or any validity in terms of why people are aggrieved. I don't see anything about it that says, hey, you know what, we should probably address some problems that we have here. To look at what happened with COVID and to imply that there was an infringement on the rights and freedoms of Albertans, I would need to understand what the fuck they were talking about. We were told that we did not have to get vaccinated if we didn't want to. Then we were told that our employers had the right to say, no, we're going to not have you come back if you're not vaccinated. I think that there's it's frustrating, but there is a balance to be had between I want to, have a staff that work for me and are healthy, and I want to have, my current staff all come back to work. And if your staff are saying, well, we don't want to get vaccinated, I personally don't see that as a thing that would stop an employer from keeping you on. If you've been able to do your job remotely, who cares? And I work through a sort of roundabout way for the federal government. And that is a thing that they do. They have said to me on many occasions that, if you want to come to work, you should be vaccinated. Now, I am vaccinated, although I still need to get my most recent booster. Bad Jim. But I don't see how, especially given that my role is working from home, I don't see how it is anyone's interest. And if somebody was like, I don't want to do that, I don't want to have a vaccination, and they're working from home, all right. I wish that everybody got vaccinated. And at times I have been a little more feisty than I am at this point about, we should just, make everyone get vaccinated. Because sometimes I can be a jerk. But at the end of the day, it should be people's choice. I am a libertarian, and I do believe that people have the right to make that decision for themselves, but that decision comes with ramifications. So if you don't, if there's a booming pandemic, which we had at the time, and a venue says, well, you can't be here. All right, you've made a choice. These are the ramifications of your choice. I don't care. It has always been that you don't have to be vaccinated, but you may not be allowed to do things like international travel. Okay. Those are concerned parties saying, well, you have your rights, but we have the right to, deny you the ability to do this thing. We're not denying anyone the ability to move freely within their society. We're not denying people the ability to gather. And when we did, under the COVID restrictions, it was short-term necessity that no reasonable person would argue with. Now, there are plenty of unreasonable people who did argue with it and protested and had their church services and all that shit. And cool. How many of you wound up in jail for that? None? Oh, well, I guess fuck off. People got fined. Absolutely. Not sad about it. But that ain't really a thing. Like, okay, you got fined. I'm going to just delete this comment here. Apparently I can't do it through that. I have to do it through this. Okay, apparently I don't know how to fucking do shit. God, I'm bad at being a streamer sometimes. Yeah, I don't know how to do that. Fuck it. Fuck it. We'll just keep going. And it's just, for the record, when you have a blurb of text like this, and someone's like, yeah, I'm just here to share ideas and stuff. I want to offer you promotion. And you're smart enough to know that you have to type in your URL space DOT space COM. You know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. You're just spam. And fuck it. So congratulations, you spammed. So yeah, this is for me the most obvious reason that's in the current conversation to get rid of the Conservative Party come May. It is not the only reason. The Conservative Party, and particularly the Conservative Party under Danielle Smith, has a raging boner for privatization. And a raging boner for any number of the stupid things that don't work in a society. I get that people loves their private businesses. I totally get that. They loves the idea that healthcare should be private. Again, living in Canada, public healthcare. No, it shouldn't, because it's not a question of, are we running this thing efficiently, And I always talk about this. The thing they always bring up is wait times. And the real and genuine threat to people that wait times represent. Totally agree. How do we do that? How do we fix that? Well, we fucking fund healthcare. Seems the thing. When we cut healthcare, which conservatives always do in Alberta, cut the fuck out of healthcare, and then they go, why are our healthcare systems so in disarray and so problematic? I guess we need to cut more. Or maybe we should start looking at private. Not a replacement of the public system, because that's not cool. But what about if we had a two-tier, we're not going to call it a two-tier system. We're going to call it a series of tiers that is two. And we'll go one of those tiers, cool, buds, right on. That one that everyone can use. And then another one of those tiers, cool, buds. That one's going to be for the rich folk. And the rich folk, by pulling them out of the public system, you're freeing up the public. Isn't that brilliant? Except that it does not work that way. We know it doesn't work that way. We need to simply look south for it to go, oh, that's what the end result of privatizing healthcare is, and say that's not for me. They want to do that with healthcare. They want to do that with K-12 education. They want to do it with anything they can fucking do it. The end goal of this kind of conservatism is that individuals should have the ability to pay for the things that they want and use and need. And that sounds great on paper, except that we are a social species. We live in a society. And not all of us have the same opportunities. Not all of us have the same privileges. Not all of us have the same buying power. And as soon as you establish this, you take things that Canadians consider to be rights, and you remove them from poor Canadians. I would say that in Canada, access to healthcare is a right. And if you have to go, well, you still have access to healthcare, asterisk. Well, then no, you don't. Period. End of sentence. Danielle Smith is a monster. The UCP under her are monstrous. They will, if they haven't already, and I have no idea, they will have factions that will form and will create a united Conservative Party, and there will be multiple options. I don't know if that'll happen by the time the next election comes around, but that is the cycle of Conservative politics in Alberta. What we had 80-some years of Conservative rule progressively fucking us over. Then we had 4 years of the NDP. You may not be a fan of Rachel Notley or the NDP, although you should be, but things were better. Yes, we had to spend money on things, because that's what happens when you have cut all of the money to all of the things. Eventually you hit a point where you're like, fuck, we need to pay some fucking money here. And so you do. You pay the money. And that's what they did. And they started to look at green energy. They started to look at reestablishing how we do the provision of electricity to residents of the province. They started to look at how that interaction with business works and ways to provide greater stability. These are all good things. Those were all thrown away when the UCP came in. And the UCP came in because they were like, look at the world. The whole wide world is fucked up and it must be Rachel Notley's fault. Or maybe the world was fucked up. And as a result, we had a UCP victory in the next election, and things have gotten worse. Now, COVID made things a lot worse, admittedly, and I do not blame Jason Kenney for COVID any more than I blame Justin Trudeau, Joseph Robinette Biden, Donald J. Trump, any of these people. COVID is different. COVID was a thing. Also, we've had a lot of serious economic issues, not just COVID related, but before COVID, our oil and gas prices were sinking, and Alberta is heavily tied to oil and gas prices. We need clever leadership to be like, you know what we should do? Not closely tie our shit to oil and gas and start investing in other industries and looking at alternative energy sources that are within our abilities, and on and on and on. And in my opinion, those initiatives have to be public initiatives, i.e. government owned, i.e. state owned. As a libertarian socialist, I do not believe in an end of the state. I believe that the state is responsible to the people and should not, implement authoritarian policies on them. But the space race, nuclear power, all of, name a thing that is important. And a large amount of that funding and research and implementation came from government. Here where I live, most people who had landlines, when landlines were still a thing, used a company called TELUS because it was the big one in Alberta. Who was TELUS? Well, they're a private company. They didn't always be. Once upon a time, they had a different name, and that was AGT, or Alberta Government Telephones. We've recognized the necessity for nationalized answers to some of these things for a long time. AGT was important because it was an investment by the Alberta government to ensure that lines were strung, to ensure that people had access to telephone. And, we all know people. I've never, I lived in a city all my life, but we all know people who lived in the rural areas and they had a party line because there wasn't enough lines out there yet. So, if it rang a certain way, that was your farmhouse. But if it rang a different way, that was the farmhouse down the road. Cool, right? But that investment, that cost, came from the Alberta taxpayer paying our taxes, and that being implemented among many other ways in the provision of a phone service that was widespread. Then the government decided to spin that off and turn it into a private company, and yay, aren't we just the best for it? Isn't TELUS our best friend? But we're used to the idea that the state has to do the big, massive changes. We want to get off oil. Well, oil companies aren't going to get us there. Sad to say, but they're responsible to shareholders. They're responsible for making sure that we have immediate return on investment for shareholders, because that's the only thing that business looks at. We were reading about the Great Reset, and the word stakeholders came up. In the debate that I was watching about it, they were like, well, what's a stakeholder? Which is the stupidest fucking question on earth. Stakeholders are not just your shareholders or your customers. They're the people affected and who have a stake in what is going on. We have to be looking at things from a stakeholder perspective, i.e. the bigger perspective than a capitalist mindset of we need to make money to pay back dividends to investors. We need to look at it in terms of, are we doing the right thing? Are we investing our money wisely? Are we ensuring that we are listening to the people who are affected? All of that kind of stuff. That is what they call stakeholder capitalism. As a not capitalist person, it's a better form of capitalism than what we currently use, but it's still capitalism, and it's still shitty garbage poop. But all of these things are the directions that we need to go. The UCP is exactly the party of not that. We will never get off oil if the UCP is in power. We will never prosper as a province again, because they will continue to do the things they always do. Here's an example, and it's true. $1 billion was given to a company called Encana during the COVID crisis. What did they do with that $1 billion? Glad you asked. They renamed their company and moved to the States. So basically got handed $1 billion to just not give us money anymore. Good investment, sound investment, wise decision making. Way to go, Jake Hannon. This is a thing. When you are looking at, for example, expanding into alternative energy forms or alternative chemical replacements for petroleum products, that's all cool, but there's a whole bunch of costs associated with that government or that businesses are not going to do because they don't want to do it because it's expensive, and that means money that is not going to shareholders. And the shareholders then go, well, I'm grumpy and I'm going to take my millions of dollars elsewhere. And this is a bad thing in capitalism. So we wind up in a scenario where nothing gets fixed. I don't like that. The state has to exist. The state has to lead the way and invest in some of these things. So if I was the boss of the world and I was the head of the government of Alberta, I would be less focused on, oh no, the government overstepped their boundaries and the federals, and I hate that, and I don't want to pay them money anymore. That's not fucking important. I would be looking at, okay, well, we have practical realities in this province. This province is primarily driven by oil and gas. Like it or not, that's the facts. Primarily economically powered by oil and gas is running out. We are going to hit a point where we just don't have any anymore. The Western Canadian Sedimentary Basin will deplete. What then, I ask? There's other industries here, absolutely, but the impact of that is massive. And we know this because we keep having to go back to those same fucking wells and find new and creative ways to exploit them. Fracking, SAGD, a variety of technologies that are designed to take existing, mostly spent wells and give them some kind of a fuck around so that they're once again helpful to us. It's cool, it's super neat, but it's not a long-lasting process. And eventually, you can wring out a cloth only so long before you're just not getting any fucking water out of it. That's where we're at. Not only that, but the technologies that we're using now are more and more sketchy. I'm not sure you've heard, but fracking, it turns out, sort of sucks for the environment. SAGD, I'm less understanding of. I understand the principle is to pump steam down. It's like steam assisted, whatever. But you're pumping steam down to essentially create pressure, if I understand correctly, and force oil to collect so that we can slurp it on up with our slurping sticks. Cool. But eventually that will stop working because there's just no fucking oil left. We're all out of dinosaurs. And it takes a while before we can turn people into oil. So we're stuck. The government needs to address this. The government needs to look at this and say, our stakeholders will be negatively impacted by the end of the oil and gas and by the diminishing of the importance of oil and gas. So we have to have a little forethought. We have to prepare ourselves for this coming future. And what that looks like probably is ensuring that we have valid, viable other economic modalities that will allow the people to survive. Ensuring that those people are trained in those modalities. I would say the future is particularly bright for things like alternative energy. So you go, well, let's be a leader in that. Let's jump in on that. But even if you don't, if you go, you know what, everyone's going to be a farmer. We're going to grow spit. I don't fucking care. We're going to grow spit. That's the thing. I'm going to train every single person in Alberta how to be a spit farmer now and how to work a spit farm and the spit machinery and all the spit things. I don't fucking care what you do. But that's where your economic investment is not going to come from private industry. It's going to have to come from government. That's why we have taxes and taxation, because the government has costs and they go, oh, to offset these costs, we have to have an income. That's how taxes work. Add to that, you can have a government that does things like nationalizes particular industries or services or companies or whatever, and utilizes the profits from those otherwise, typical capitalist, like the Crown Corporation concept. You have a corporation owned by the Crown, and that money, the revenue that would come to a regular business, instead goes into the coffers of the government. Right? This is all sensible shit, and I'm not talking about, implementing Stalinist, we're all going to only eat Victory brand meat or any of that shit. Like, this isn't the thing. But what we're talking about is how do we transform and transition to the next wave of what society is going to look like. And the UCP, their answer is, well, we're just not. Danielle Smith, we went over the post of the article she made the other day about how super based and red-pilled it is to smoke cigarettes. And that all that science about smoking being dangerous is just, bullshit. No, this is who is leading this province. So we are absolutely in a position where we have to vote the motherfuckers out. We're not going to win as a society if we continue to let these people control us. And literally, when I say control us, I mean run the government. It boggles my mind that all of this anger is foisted on the federal government when it was the provincial government that was like, hey, we're going to enact lockdowns. And we didn't have any lockdowns. Let's be fucking honest. What we had was a very minor easing of social interaction with plenty of exceptions and no enforcement. So if you want to call that a violent quarantine, maybe you are wrong and dumb. The whole thing is so fucking stupid, right? We're not having our rights and freedoms infringed on. We may feel like it at times, and we may hate the idea of paying taxes, and we may hate this, and we may hate that. But if we learn what the hell is going on, we're like, oh, makes sense. But instead, what we do is we go to some fucking crypto bro bullshit guy who's like, hey, guy, here's what we're going to do. We're going to be upset about it, so we're going to create our own sovereign currency. Like, sovereign is a word that I associated with kings and queens and right up until, like, the, Treaty of Versailles type times. That was the last time I gave a shit about the word sovereign. Then I heard about sovereign citizens, and I was like, oh, those people are insane. Then I heard about all of this other shit, like the Sovereignty Act and all of these people whining about Alberta's sovereignty. Alberta's not sovereign. We're part of a fucking country. Get the shit over it. And if you don't like the fact that we don't have as much voice or representation or whatever, find a solution for that. That's cool. But the solution can't be, I'm going to take my oil-based ball and go to my oil-based home. That ain't a solution. So I am Canadian. Did I satisfactorily ramble for 40 or 50 minutes about the topic? Because I feel good about it. At the end of the day, I'm not a huge believer in any one political party. None of the political parties align to who I am. The one that comes best here is the NDP. The UCP is the one that comes almost the furthest, but I'm sure that someone will be there that will be even farther from what I want. I don't really support the Marxist-Leninist type parties because A, that's never going to happen in Alberta. It's just a waste of a vote. And B, I'm not an ML. I may describe myself as a socialist, but I'm not a Marxist-Leninist. There's nothing wrong with Marxist-Leninist thought in general, but it leads to tankies, and tankies are a problem. Tankies are a big problem. Yeah. Sure did get a good ramble out of that. So yeah, vote not UCP. I would highly suggest that people look at the unfortunate reality that is strategic voting. In my neighborhood, I will have to try and gauge whether, most people will be going UCP because Rachel Notley ruined our economy and it wasn't COVID at all. And I'll just have to bite my tongue and I'll vote by whoever I feel has the most likelihood of winning, which will probably be an NDP candidate. But if it came down to there was a Liberal candidate that had that power, I'd probably have to vote Liberal just to do that. I would hate myself. I do not support liberalism or in fact, the Alberta Liberal Party has been in such disarray for so long that it's almost an afterthought. Where once they were the number 2 choice, and the NDP was just like, for like school marms. Now the world is different, and the LDP, the Liberals are just not an option. The UCP and whatever little offshoots that they create, they'll be like the regular old type conservative party, and then there'll be the like, we are very good at being the conservatives. Do you want to get on the trains party? They will destroy us because they will refuse to do anything to prevent that destruction. I'm not being hyperbolic here. We have to change. Like it or not, dismissive of, climate science, you may very well be, but you can dismiss a thing all you want, but thank God you're not the boss of the world. The reality is our system is failing. We have to change. And these are the people who will actively refuse to change. And in fact, any change they implement will be all steps backwards. Not a good look. All right, I think it's time for me to take another break, and I will come back. And if we want to talk some more, we can talk some more. Otherwise, we can do some karaoke. I'm good either way. But I will be back momentarily. I'll play different music this time because there's only so much 9/4 y'all can put up with reasonably. Let's see. Blurk Derp, what are you again? Do you have real instruments or do you have fake instruments? Oh, that's all fake instruments, I think. Let's just make sure. Yeah, that looks like fake instruments. And I think I just have to... No, I don't have to do that. Okay, so we'll press play. Oh, that's starting somewhere in the wrong spot. There we go. All right, I shall return shortly. returned. And I don't see anything in the chat that implies people having interesting conversations they want to have. So that's going to leave me with some karaoke. And it looks like I think I'm either all alone or there's a few people that are listed as viewers, and hopefully y'all are having fun and enjoying and all that kind of stuff. Either way, let's do some karaoke. I only came up with one song initially, and it's a ghost song, surprise, surprise, that I was going to do. So feel free if you are watching and want to put stuff in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just wing it and sing my little songs. Yeah, we're going to start with a little Ghost. Hopefully I remember how this goes. When the summer dies, severing the ties, I'll give you always. Will you walk the line? This might be low. A path serpentine. This is probably high. Remember always that love is all you need. Tell me who you wanna be, and I will set you free. There's a darkness at the heart of my love that runs cold, runs deep. The darkness at the heart of my love for you. I'm with you always, always. And there a pair of eyes, let's watch it as it dries. Remember always that love is all you need. Tell me who you wanna be, I will set you free. There's a darkness at the heart of my love. It runs cold, runs deep. The darkness at the heart of my love. So cold, so sweet. There's a darkness at the heart of my love. It runs cold, runs deep. Darkness at the heart of my love for you. Remember always that love is all you need. Tell me who you wanna be, and I will set you free. There's a darkness at the heart of my love that runs cold, runs deep. The darkness at my heart of my love, so cold, so sweet. There's a darkness at the heart of my love. It runs cold, runs deep. The darkness at the heart of my love. So cold, so sweet. And all this bullshit that I would put you through. Darkness at the heart of my love for you. When the sun dies, celebrating the times, I'm with you always, always. Days of paradise, let's watch as it dries. I'm with you always, always. Well, early morning Satanism, or I guess mid-afternoon Satanism. All right, what else do I want to do? No one's piping up in the old chat. I want to spell karaoke wrong. Karaoke. I was listening to a bunch of stuff this weekend. A lot of it not in my range, but there was some good stuff. Let's do Bad Religion. Let's see what Bad Religion we have. 21st Century Digital Boy, that's a good song. Sorrow, I Want to Conquer the World. Infected, New Dark Ages, Better Off Dead, American Jesus. Let's do American Jesus. Why not? Be a global citizen, cause I'm blessed by nationality. I'm a member of a growing populace, reinforce our popularity. There are things that seem to pull us under, and there are things that drag us down. But there's a power and a vital presence that's lurking all around. We've got the American Jesus, see him on the interstate. We've got the American Jesus, he helped build the presidential state. I feel sorry for the Earth's population, just so few live in the USA. At least the foreigners can copy our morality. They can visit, but they cannot stay. Only precious few can garner the prosperity that makes us walk into new confidence. We got a place to go when we die, and the architect resides right here. We've got the American Jesus, bolstering national faith. We've got the American Jesus, overwhelming millions every day. Probably an important sign of the rise of Christo fascism, or Christian nationalism, as they like to call it. He's the farmer's barren fields, the force the army wields, the expression on the faces of the starving millions, the power of the damned, the fuel that drives the clan, the motive and the conscience of the murderer. He's the preacher on TV, the false sincerity, the form letter that's written by the big computers, nuclear bombs, kids with no moms, and I'm faithful that he's inside me. Yeah, we've got the American Jesus, see him on the interstate. We've got the American Jesus, exercising his authority. We've got the American Jesus, bolstering national faith. We've got the American Jesus, overwhelming millions every day. Yeah. One nation, under God. 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 That makes me want to sing SNL wonder if Head Smashed In is on as karaoke. Let's see. This could be a thing or it could be terrible. Why is it starting at 9 seconds? That doesn't seem good. Oh no, that's someone doing karaoke. Okay. That's a shame. I don't think they have Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump. But we can just remove Head Smashed and find us some SNFU karaoke. Painful Reminder, Cheap Transistor Radio, This Is a Goodbye, I Forget. Painful Reminder, Time to Buy a Futon, Drunk on a Bike. We'll do Cockatoo Quill. Is this actually karaoke? Drinking again, I'm not thinking ahead. I got that shrinking feeling that only grows larger day by day, lager by lager. And I'm still sitting here, writing my will with my cockatoo quill. The one thing I own, one thing that's not on loan, one thing I haven't sold. Yeah. It's so easy just to fuck it all and go for the mercendal. Something stronger to get me back on the wagon I just fell off of. Another swig, one last go, one more tablet to pop. Anything to get me to start working on what I've been putting off. And I'm still sitting here, writing my will with the cockatoo quill. The one thing I own, one thing that's not on loan, one thing I haven't sold. Yeah. And I'm still sitting here, writing my will with a cockatoo quill. The one thing I own, one thing that's not on loan, one thing I haven't sold yet. Oh, holy bro, you got featured on a Twitch News article. Congrats, bro. I don't think I did. I'm pretty sure I did not, but thank you. That's the predicament that I'm currently wrestling with. And I'm gonna win, and I'm gonna win, and I'm gonna win, and I won't be pinned. You got featured, they wrote a whole section about you. Well, I have not heard anything about it, and I'd be pretty surprised because I am the smallest of the small streaming handies. That said, if I did, that's pretty cool. We're gonna do some more karaoke. Hey, if you want to hear a karaoke song, let me know. Livestream fails online. Well, that sounds like it could very well be me. I have been known to fail brilliantly sometimes. However, and I'm not going to click some random link from a random person, so I appreciate that, Peter Stink, and thank you for the follow. And hopefully if I fail, I failed with grace and poise. Let's see. I want to do some ska. What would be good? Let's do some Real Big Fish. Don't want to do Beer. Let's do Sellout. That's a fun song. Well, I know you can't work in fast food all your life, but don't sign that paper tonight. She said, but it's too late. And I don't remember what I read, don't remember what they said. I guess it doesn't matter, I guess it doesn't matter anymore. You're gonna go to the record store, you're gonna give them all your money. The radio plays what they want you to hear. Tell me it's cool, I just don't believe it. Sell out with me, oh yeah, sell out with me tonight. Record company's gonna give me lots of money and everything's gonna be alright. No more flipping burgers, putting on my silly hat. You know I don't want that no more. And I didn't ask when we get paid, quit my day job anyway. I guess it doesn't matter, I guess it doesn't matter anymore. You're gonna go to the record store, you're gonna give them all your money. Radio plays what they want you to hear. Tell me it's cool, I just don't believe it. Sell out with me, oh yeah, sell out with me tonight. The record gonna give me lots of money and everything's gonna be. And I don't think it'll be so bad, and I know it won't be so bad. Cause the man said that's the way it is, and the man said it don't get better than this, no, no, no. So I signed on to the record company, they're gonna give me lots of money. If I play what they want you to hear, tell me it's cool, now I should believe it. Sell out with me, oh yeah, sell out with me tonight. The record company's gonna give me lots of money and everything's gonna be alright. Company is gonna make everything alright. Recognize you in the paper knife, she said, but I can't work in fast food all my life. Yeah, I cocked up the ending there, that's alright. I think I'm the only one watching, so I can do what I want. Alright. I haven't sang any Maiden in a while, I don't think. Run to the Hills. I feel like that's so not in my range. We'll try it anyways. Why the fuck not? White man came across the sea. He brought us pain and misery. He killed our tribe, he killed our creed. He took our game for his own need. We fought him hard, we fought him well. Out on the plains, we gave him hell. But many came, too much for free. Oh, will we ever be set free? Riding through dust clouds and barren wastes, galloping hard on the plains, chasing the redskins back to their homes, fighting them at their own game. Murder for freedom, the stab in the back, women and children, the cowards attack. Run to the hills, run for your life, Run to the hills. Run for your life. Soldier blue in the barren waste, hunting and killing their game, raping the women and wasting the men. The only good Injuns are tame, selling them whiskey and taking their gold, enslaving the young and destroying the old. Run to the hills. Run for your life. Run to the hills. Run for your life. That's definitely not a song. But I'm not. Run for your life. Run to the hills. Run for your life. Run to the hills. Run for your life. Run to the hills. Run for your life. As per the chat messages here, it is entirely possible that I am in some article on a website called livestreamfails.online. It probably wouldn't be a Twitch news article so much as, if it's a real thing, it would be someone going, haha, yuck yuck, this guy sucks. And people are entitled to their opinions. I enjoy what I do. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. That said, feels a little sussy. Some random person pops into my chat when I am the smallest of the small streaming Andes and goes, hey, you were featured in a Twitch article. Here's a link. And I'm like, is it though? If I mouse over this, do I see a preview of it? Let me just see. No, it appears I do not have that thing turned on. What that tells me is that there's no way in hell I'm going to click that link because it's probably garbage. And honestly, at the end of the day, if people don't like me, I don't give a shit. I'm not doing this to be a big, successful, rich streamer boy. I'm just doing it because it's fun and I enjoy it. And I don't care if people don't like what I do or whatever, or do like what I do. Like, it's cool that they do, but I'm not going to like lose sleep or cry or anything like that. On that note, let's do Bon Jovi. We got Living on a Bed of Roses. Wanted Dead or Alive. I'm kind of leaning towards that one. Yeah, we'll do that one. The Cowboy, Young Guns, Bon Jovi. Ooh, that intro just pops. only the names have changed every day. Seems we're wasting away in another place where the faces are so cold. I drive all night just to get back home. I'm a cowboy on a steel horse I ride. I'm wanted, dead or alive. Wanted, dead or alive. Sometimes I sleep, sometimes it's not for days. The people I meet always go their separate ways. Sometimes you tell the day by the bottle that you drink. Sometimes when you're alone, all you do is think. I'm a cowboy on a steel horse I ride. I'm wanted, dead or alive. Wanted, dead or alive. Oh, and I ride. I'm a cowboy on a steel horse I ride. I'm wanted, dead or alive. But I walk these streets, a loaded six-string on my back. I play for keeps, 'cause I might not make it back. Been everywhere, still I'm standing tall. I've seen a million faces, and I rock them all. I'm a cowboy on a steel horse I ride. I'm wanted, wanted, dead or alive. And I'm a cowboy, got the night on my side. And I'm wanted, wanted, dead or alive. And I ride, dead or alive. I still drive, dead or alive, dead or alive, dead or alive, dead or alive, dead or alive. Peter Stink is no longer in the chat. I wonder if that's just another shitty, garbagey fake account trying to do fake account things. You know what I've never done? Never done any Journey. I don't know if I want to do Journey. Don't Stop Believing. You know what? I don't want to do any Journey. What was that REO Speedwagon song? Keep On Loving You. This song annoys the shit out of me because when they sing it, the line is we're still together, and it's like we're still together. They hold on to that and it's wrong. So I'm gonna try this. I don't even know if I know the song, but we'll find out. sucks, I'll stop. Because I can do that. No, you know what? I do not know the tune. So we will stop before we even start. Something a little more modern. Do I know even any modern music? I'm not good at the moderns. I'm old. Old people don't do that stuff. You know what? Tragically Hip was there. And it made me want to do a Tragically Hip song. Not Bob Cajun, I've already done that one. Not Music It Works, because that sucks. Let's do Weak Kings. I used to be in a band that covered this song. I was playing upright bass, so it was a thing. But then maybe I'll do one more after this and be done. Sundown in the Paris of the prairies, Weak Kings of all, treasures buried, and all you hear are the rusty breezes fail, pushing around the weather vane Jesus. Zippo lighter, he sees the killer's face. Maybe it's someone standing in a killer's place. 20 years for nothing, well that's nothing new. Besides, no one's interested in something you didn't do. We kings and pretty things, let's just see what the morning brings. There's a dream he dreams with the high school's dead and starved. It's a museum and we're all locked up in it after dark. But the walls are lined all yellow, gray and sinister, hung with pictures of our parents, prime ministers. We kings and pretty things, wait and see what tomorrow brings. Like breaking story on the CDC. A nation whispers who've always knew their ego free. And you can't be fond of living in the past. 'Cause if you are, then there's no way that you're gonna last. We kings and pretty things, let's just see what tomorrow brings. We kings and pretty things, oh, that's what tomorrow brings. Shit, that's like, alright, I'm gonna do one more song and call it a stream. I got shit to do. Some high energy. After that, slow ass song. Okay, one last ditty. One last love shove. Oh, you know what? Honeymoon Suite might be fun. Let's see if I spelled it wrong, but whatever. Stay in the Light, that was a fun song. I've been singing that. It kept coming on the girlfriend's car. Little classic Canadiana to close off the stream. Well, this doesn't have like actual vocals, 'cause that is mine. We'll find out together. I wake up in the morning, sky is gray and storming, rippling bridges and city streets, still as ugly as yesterday. They need me to tell me anything just to sell me, but I learn quick when I have to. I wanna say it to ya, I wanna say it to ya, I wanna say, stay in the light, keep your target inside, don't listen to fools on the run. Stay in the light, keep your target inside, don't listen to fools on the run. I can look up to you, I will look right through you, I see just what I wanna see, things are easier that way. I stand alone, but I need a home. I'm just playing along with this waiting game. Waiting game. Fuck, I don't know what's in there. Waiting game. The waiting game. Stay in the light. Keep your target inside. Don't listen to fools on the run. Stay in the light, keep your target inside. Don't listen to fools on the run. Fools on the run. Not all of us Also, this is a great stay in the light, keep your target inside. Don't listen to fools on the run. Stay in the light, keep your target inside. Don't listen to fools on the run. Stay in the light, keep your target inside. Don't listen to fools on the run. Stay in the light, keep your target inside. Don't listen to fools on the run. Alright, I think that's about it for the stream today. We talked a little bit about Andrew Callaghan and the glorious fall from grace that was his terrible ass fucking attempt at an apology. Sorry, Andrew, but you failed. We talked a little bit about the way that society progresses means that we're constantly in a position where we look at our media and go, did not age well. Then we talked a little bit about the upcoming May election in Alberta and how we really need to make sure that those conservatives fuck right the fuck off. And then we did karaoke. So I'd call that a pretty decent day. And if you liked the stream, I hope you had a good time. I know I did. Feel free to do the likes, the subscribes, the whatevers, the follows, the things. You don't worry about subscribing on YouTube, or sorry, on Twitch. I am in the affiliate program, but I'm not in any way interested in making money off of Twitch. It's never been a thing. It will never be a thing. I'm probably just going to pop off of the affiliate program. It was more like a, what does this do? And I've had it for like a bunch of months, and it really doesn't do much for me. I'm not chasing that dollar, so maybe I should just stop with the affiliate program. Either way, I hope you had fun, and maybe we'll see you again. Cool. In the meantime and in between time, that's it. Another edition of whatever it is that I'm doing.